All right, everybody. Welcome to another fun episode of the Macro Perspective. And today we have a guest, Jonathan. I'm gonna pronounce your name wrong. Lutz. What is it?
You got it, Lutz.
Lutz. Okay. So, yeah. I mean, I should have gone off of my hooked on phonics, but um, nonetheless, we were talking about topics and conversation pieces that we really wanted to hit on. That it's like interesting in the space, and Jonathan being a coach that he'll kind of do a little intro about here in a second, as well. And we just were like, well, what if we're talking about XYZ topics? And I think the coolest thing here is that we kind of stumbled upon this thing that is actually kind of like very niche, heavy, and specific right now. And it's kind of something I've noticed that Jonathan's been doing for a good portion of the last couple of years with his training style. But then I also know the type of clients that he does train predominantly may not lean to like his style of like athletic endeavor and performance. So it's kind of interesting to probably hear about how you might be disassociating or collaborating those ideas, melding them together. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's give people a little background on you, Jonathan.
Yeah, for sure. So, like you said, my name is Jonathan Lutz, coming from a German descent. Lutz would be the technical pronunciation if we're going from Germany. But yeah, I am an ex-college athlete. I played football at a small school in Kentucky. Rep Lindsey Wilson College. We were actually national champs. I was a very subpar quarterback. So we'll go ahead and get that out there. I was not a great athlete. I was just good enough to be there on the team and get to travel. So I was that kind of athlete. But yeah, I got out of playing college sports, and the easy transition was to get into coaching. I coached some kids when I was in college, doing obviously sports training when I was back home. People knew me as the athlete that was playing college sports, so I could train their kids. But then that transitioned into me getting a job in person. Started in person coaching for about 2 years while I was doing online coaching for that time part time. And then I actually swapped those roles this past year, and I'm doing full time online and then part time in person with a few clients that I still work with. But yeah, that's the rundown on my past. Always loved that approach of training that's more athletic based. Obviously, as an athlete, that's the way I trained. I started making content when I was in high school about my training, about my nutrition. Been documented ever since. It's been years, and yeah, that's the rundown. And don't plan on stopping anytime soon.
Ooh, I like it. And you were NAIA level collegiate athlete with football, right? Being a quarterback, right?
Yeah, so that's as small as you can get, but technically, like skill wise, it's higher than Division 3 if we're getting
Oh,
technical
I
with it.
know.
But like
I
I
know. I
said,
was kind of I was in the same. I was in the same when I wrestled, so I totally get it. That takes a lot of it takes a lot of vulnerability to show that level of documentation. I have a question. Why did you document your nutrition and fitness goals as you were going through to college? Were you trying to get highlights? Were you trying to get recruiters to check you out, or was it just because you kind of like the whole vlog sharing lifestyle?
yeah, it was actually really interesting. I was a kid. I grew up. I was not like overweight from like an obesity standpoint, but I was overweight from the perspective of an athlete. Like I played
Mm,
offensive tackle and tight end until I was in middle school, and then I was quarterback like the next year, just because I was bigger than everybody, and then started to like be able to fit the mold of my position. But I was always like the bigger kid. It was like my
yeah.
sophomore year, I guess, the end of my sophomore year. I was like, dang, I'm not going to be able to play college sports with my just based off my talent. I got to do what everybody else isn't doing. So I started to get into training, nutrition, went head on into it, learned just as much as I could. Ever since I was a junior in high school, I've been reading books and taking courses and doing as much as possible just to learn. And I got into YouTube, is what happened. I got into people like Steve Cook, if you know who that is.
Oh
And
yeah.
then like Matt Does Fitness. And I was like following these people, and I was like, dang, if they're documenting their stuff, I can start documenting my stuff and just show like what an athlete does. So I started
Yeah.
doing that. And obviously, like I said, it was my training and my nutrition, how I was getting my fuel for my sessions, and just the things I was learning. And I guess in like 2017, I made a new Instagram account that was separate from my personal and just started posting. So there wasn't like a direction with it, but
Yeah.
after like a year of it, I was like, okay, I could see myself doing something in this lane in the future. So I want to build that consistency, and wasn't trying to be an influencer or anything, but I just wanted to document what I was doing.
No,
Huh.
that's really cool. I think, you're QB, so you probably have to take like some notes from like the Tom Brady, that longevity in the sport, right? Being an athlete for a long time, and you get to see guys like the Rodgers getting hurt now or things like that. And it's like, I noticed that you got hurt your last year. What happened, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so I actually had two things happen, but my going into my junior year, I actually tore my labrum in my throwing arm. So I played an entire year with a torn labrum, which was just, it
Yeah,
sucked because number one, I couldn't perform like I wanted to. That was the worst part. But obviously, the outside of that, the effects of that was I wasn't able to to perform, and therefore I wasn't be able to play in the games like I wanted to, you know. So
yeah,
moving into my senior year, I had the option to obviously continue to play, and have a red shirt injury year and have another year after my senior year. And I was just like, you know what? I think I just want to start working, because alongside my education of training, nutrition, that stuff, I also got really into the self help and the business side of things. I was reading like Grant Cardone 10X book when I was in high school. I was a senior in high school, and I just loved business stuff. And I was like, dang, maybe I could just go start my own business when I was a junior in high school. And I was like, you know what? That's what I'm going to do instead of playing football. So transitioned
all
straight
right.
out of
Mar-
my
Mar-
last year.
Marcos, this guy right here, it's a good thing he's in our circle, because it's funny. All the things that you're hitting on are exactly like the things that I talk about with Marcos. So that's kind of funny.
Hey,
Marcos, you got
well,
any follow up on that or any points?
well, I mean, from the outside person looking in, like, um, I can I can tell that like there's a lot of level of like comfort to like your transition, because obviously when I first met you, I know that you were doing more of the in-person training route and you were like building that online thing. I've also noticed that you've changed your actual training name, to just your name versus like your Transcend Performance that's what it was before, right? And so I think the cool thing that I've noticed is like your ability to curate the content to that level that you are like really like like super polished with. And my question to you is like, um, this is a selfish question, like with the editing and all those things that you're doing, like, is that all you? How have you figured those things out? Because obviously, like you had this gravitas to being able to um, do these things early on with just capturing yourself and recording it, but then how'd you take it to the next step of like editing? Because I don't know if a lot of people know how difficult that is to like, well, one, transition how you're making your income as a personal trainer, but then also this back end stuff that helps you establish your identity, your brand, and all that stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So first things first, like when it comes to creating content, I just had to fail a lot. I got to a point where I was making so much content that obviously the more you do, the more you start to reiterate on things, the more you start to like get different ways of making it more efficient. Then obviously with today's technology, we got AI, we have different editing apps that make it easier. But the first part of it was just creating content and sucking at it for a long time. When I look back on my videos and my things from when I was in college, and I can't help but die laughing. I was so awkward on camera. My edits were awful. I didn't know what I was doing with hooks. I didn't know what I was doing with anything. But obviously, it's like anything you get into, whether that's training, nutrition, finances, your faith, whatever it is. You have that progression of growth, you know. So for me, it was sucking at the beginning, finding out like, oh, this is a little piece to it, like how to write a hook. Okay, that makes sense. I know what that means. Now, what do I do off the back end of that? And then like understanding from there, okay, people want to see some curated videos. They want to see captions, and less people actually listen to audio. So they want to see the words on the screen. And there's just like piece by piece learning. And then from like an actual practical standpoint of creating it, I just, number one, I took a lot of iterations to get there. So like there when I first started, I was typing out every word to do my captions, and then CapCut came up with the auto captions, and now I use like an AI tool that's $20 a month, and it does my captions for me, so I don't have to do it, and it puts in emojis for me. So, like I said, it's that over time learning, but yeah, it's just failing time after time and figuring out along the way.
Question
Yeah.
though. So that does the captions and the emojis. Who does the edits and like the cuts? Is it the AI still or you?
Yeah, so I do the edits and cuts. I go into CapCut and I do all that, and like I'll make some like the background noise, like if you hear a ding or a swoosh or something, I do that, and then I just download it into that AI tool, and it puts in the captions for me.
There it is. There it is,
Genius.
Marcos. That's
Well, no,
genius.
I was curious because it's like, again, casual observer here, just watching like a lot of people that I've interacted with over the years go through their growth, and you see, again, you see those like those iterations, and it's like, all right, like I know these tools exist, right? I know potentially which one he's using based off of what's popping up based on those things, because they all have like a similar kind of like layout to them to a degree, right? But I'm like, but did he find one that actually does the clipping and the editing part, like can zoom in and out and add those extra little polished touches, or is Jonathan spending the time to do that himself, and then now he's telling me he does? So it's like, damn it, it means I have to do it too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm waiting on that one to
Yeah,
come out. I'm like, I just want to be able to drop a video in it. It does everything for me, which obviously that's going to happen at some point. But for now, I'm chopping it up and I'm doing the
We've
transitions and stuff.
seen it. We've seen it, but they're like apparently like there's like wait lists of like thousands of people, and like they're not letting anyone in, or it's like gonna cost so much, and I'm like, I want that, I want it now, but I don't know if like they're ready for it yet.
yeah.
Yeah, honestly, when you get down to it, like putting it in CapCut and making those little edits, like the zoom in, zoom out transition, it takes me like 5 minutes. Once I figured out how to do it, it doesn't take long.
Yeah,
Ah, that was my
easy
next
enough.
question. I want to know
Well,
how long it took you.
John,
You say that again?
No, I just wanted to know how long it took you. I was curious if it was like 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes, per
I mean,
iteration.
obviously at the beginning, yeah, at the beginning, that was like it would take me like 30 minutes to an hour to figure out how to do it. And then over time, it got to a point where I was like, oh, click this, click that. And you just figure it out. So now it's like a 3 to 5 minute situation.
yeah, no, that's cool. Jonathan, I wanted to move the conversation to like more of training as maybe for your clients, maybe for yourself. The things we talk about on the pod are like how do you do your food, fitness, finance, family, and focus. I want to talk about maybe like your fitness component. I know you're an athlete, and what kind of training are you doing right now? Is it more of like a hybrid kind of training? Is it like strength and conditioning? Is it like CrossFit based? What is it like physique based? What kind of training do you do nowadays for yourself and maybe even for kind of like your clientele?
Yeah, so I can give you a rundown of what I do and then what I do with my clients because they're not exactly the same thing. Obviously, that's a person to person situation. But for me personally, I do a hybrid model, right? Like that's a big buzzword nowadays. Everybody's doing hybrid training. They're running their 20 miles on a Saturday, hitting their 500-pound deadlift. But for me, I run 2, 3 days a week. I have one long run. And by long run, I mean like 9, 10 miles is a long run for me. I'm not hitting 20 miles. I'm not trying to take 2 hours to run. But yeah, I lift in a conventional way. So deadlifts a lot, squats a lot, bench press. I do the general things, pull ups, like the things that most people should be doing, and the things that honestly
Yeah.
I generally program for my clients. Um, and alongside that, I do include some of that hybrid training just because for two reasons. Number one, I really like getting outside and just being able to be outside away from a camera, away from a laptop, outside of a building. So I love that component. But also, I love cardio. I love doing conditioning. That's one of the things that brought me into doing some CrossFit in the recent years and really loving that is just the concurrent training model and being able to lift and do conditioning at the same or and do um, cardio at the same time. I absolutely love that. It's my favorite style of training. Like throw me into something with a rowing machine, some assault bike, sprints. I'll take that every day over something heavy. But
Yeah.
I obviously understand the importance of lifting, understand the importance of building muscle and strength. So include that stuff as well. So
Yeah.
generally
For
speaking, my training does look like that. But right now
yeah.
I'm doing more bodybuilding just because I'm on a cut for the next
Yeah.
4 weeks.
I'm on the same, like when I was doing my cut and photo shoot, it was very much like bodybuilding esque, where it's like you lift a few times a week, and then the rest of the day you literally rest. And if you're gonna do your cardio, it's just you walk, right? It was like strength and lifts, low intensity, steady state cardio. But I wanted to ask, like, what is the primary like thing about this hybrid training, this concurrent model that makes it so much more maybe appealing right now? Because like you were saying, like hybrid is like this buzzword right now. What is it about that's getting so appealing? What is it about as a from the scientific side of the training principles? Why is it so like, oh, this is a great model to try as compared to maybe something else?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. Number one, I think it's the people that started to represent it. The way they look is part of it. Like you see, Nick Bear is the person who brought that hybrid training to the forefront, right? And the dude's freaking yoked,
Yeah,
and he's out there running 20 miles and ultra marathons. Everybody sees that and they're like, "Dang, I want to look like that, so I'm going to do that." Obviously, that's my beef with hybrid training. Is these people they did a lot of strength training prior to getting into the running and the hybrid, so that's why they can go out and do these long runs and still retain muscle. And if you look at Nick Bear, you can notice he loses muscle, he gains it back. He phases his training and nutrition appropriately. But I think the thing from just a health perspective is understanding that aerobic conditioning. And this even kind of comes back to looking at CrossFit athletes as well and understanding like you can see these athletes that are in amazing shape, but they do this concurrent model with cardio and weights, and they use a lot of aerobic conditioning. They're lifting and they look absolutely incredible. They have these amazing bodies. And I think that's what's getting people into it is that understanding of, oh, I can lift heavy, I can do cardio, and it's going to make me look really good as well. So I think the looks is
yeah,
probably the biggest thing. Um, but for me, I'm like, if people would understand the importance of that aerobic base and understand why that is so important, they would see why it's actually a good model of training. Maybe not the running isn't for everybody, but a hybrid model of cardio and doing weights is really important for every level of health and fitness, no matter what age you are.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Marcus, you had a question?
No, I agree. A lot of I think a lot of people can capture a lot of baskets with like functional fitness that CrossFit typically invokes, which is, high intensity done and, in a variety of ways and over different time domains, right? Can't give the exact definition, even though I was listening to a Greg Glassman podcast earlier. So, and I'm also a level two coach. So, damn, I guess I would fail my L3. Nonetheless, though, like, that like in the beginning it starts as the fun of it, and then you're like addicted to the fact that you're getting better at these things and your ability to have your objective scores get better, right? Your weight's going up and or your time's going down in benchmark workouts. But then the thing, like when you get to that like top level, is really understanding like parsing out like aerobic capacity, understanding like lactate threat. Like you actually get into the science of shit, you know what I mean? And the people that are doing it at the highest level, they not only do they know their body, but they then surround themselves with people that have these very nuanced approaches to a lot of it, which is really cool to see. So they're like, oh, how can, we can use this past weekend as the example. How do all these top level games athletes, a couple weeks after the games go do the Rogue Invitational, and the top 20 male and female are there, and they did a lot of crazy shit. I mean, we had I think three or five, six girls deadlift over 400 pounds. Like what? And most of these women are
The
also
fuck?
carrying the capacity to do the whatever else they did during the course of the weekend. I don't think they had a long run, but there was some probably endurance event that I'm just not familiarizing myself with. I was just blown away at that number because I'm like, these girls are probably like 145 to 160. Some of them over there like, you know, over tripling their body weight on a dead, or being pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Fucking wild. So I see the allure personally, but then I think The other drawback though is he was like, oh well, those women can almost be too muscular. I was like, look, like that's probably not gonna be you, you know, with the people we coach. Like I would, if you could get to
Yeah.
that level, then I'll give you your money
I
back.
Mar-
You know what I mean?
no, exactly right,
Yeah.
Marcos. Like if you wake up that jacked tomorrow, why don't you take a rest week, eat whatever you want? We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You can go eat like cookies and ice cream
No.
if you look that
No.
jacked. Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I was going to say, hire me as a coach. I can use you as a transformation if you're going to get like that. Because I don't have any clients that are getting jacked off of getting in their conditioning and lifting. So
No.
Yeah,
not to
it's
that
an
extent,
interesting one.
obviously, 2 days.
Yeah, I was talking with obviously this is not the outskirts. This is more of the general population that I'm talking about here. Like when you look at the allure of hybrid training, because there's an allure for me as well. We're looking at the Nick Bears, we're looking at the Rich Fronings, and we're looking at the Dan Baileys and Matt Frazier's and all these CrossFit girls that look freaking top of the food chain, right? Like that's who we see. But when someone does a training program like that and they've never trained, they're not necessarily gonna get that body, because the person that is a CrossFit top athlete, what were they before? They were likely a top athlete in a different category before CrossFit. This is before
Yep.
CrossFit Kids and CrossFit Teens was a thing, but like they were probably lifting and doing strength and conditioning in a college D1 athletic room, whether they were in football or like baseball. And then they went into CrossFit. So they already had a foundation of musculature, right?
Yep.
So I definitely see that, because I remember talking with my strength and conditioning coach, and he had that same argument. He's like, CrossFit is cool, but remember, CrossFit is two different things. There's the CrossFit Games, who are like the top of the top of the top, and then there's the CrossFit Gym. That's like your general person, and what their training is, they're really good at training right in the middle. They're really good at being that generalist. They're really good at being the jack of all trades. They're good at endurance. They're good at stamina. They're good across the board with everything, but they're not necessarily like numero uno in the physique. They're not necessarily numero uno at strength. They're not necessarily numero uno with like the 400-meter. They're just good in everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's my one beef with CrossFit in general is like a lot of these gym pop people would just go into a CrossFit gym and think they can do what these CrossFit athletes are doing, and they just end up getting beat down and feel like garbage. And I've seen that from CrossFit people who are in gyms. And I think that's obviously where you have to understand, like, there's nuance to each individual's training, and just showing up for a class and doing whatever thing is going to beat you down for the day isn't necessarily ideal, and it's probably not going to lead to the results that you want to. So CrossFit, obviously there's some benefits to it that are great, but you gotta weigh the good and the bad with it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, that's the thing that's the thing where like I still have I look, I've been in the gym model. I've done the boot camp coaching. I've done the group coaching model. That's my beef with it, is like, I'll use jiu-jitsu as an example because this is a great example. In jiu-jitsu, they do a thing where they do an introductory class, okay? They do an introductory class and they teach you the basics. And over 6 months, you're in that intro class, and then 6 months later you can do the hard class, or like you're free to go. Like you're ready, you're good on the floor. However, in the group model, I've seen this time and time again. You get someone off the street, they come in, hey, I want to do your class. Oh, I got a class pass. I want to do this. They see the person they partnered up with, or they're doing the workout. It's like, sure, there are modifications. Sure, there are, progressions. But man, how many times, Marcos, I don't know, you've probably seen this. How many times have you hurt somebody? Because you're like, all right, this person's technically quote unquote healthy. We're going to make him snatch today. Never snatched a day in their life, or like never did this, workout move. And you're like, shoot, I don't know if that person was ready for it. There wasn't no intro class. They're just general pop person in the dying of workout class.
It's funny you should
Yeah,
mention that.
that's what makes it hard.
Yeah. Seamus, it's funny you should mention that though, because when I am recommending CrossFit to some of my older population patient based people, I'm like, here's how you're going to
Mm-hmm.
differentiate a good and a bad, facility, right? And it's not going to the free class.
Mm-hmm.
It's seeing if they have an on-ramping program. If you go in there and you can do
Yep.
that first and then kind of feel it out, you have, one-to-one time. You almost have to kind of go through some personal training in a sense these days because a lot of people could have 10 plus years of experience or have 0 years of experience. So you would want to, like, yes, you can go in and hop in for this like free class, quote unquote, but then like how are you distinguishing your ability and your capacity? And I mean, the it's hard, because some people that are filling in for that day, you don't know who you're getting. You don't know their credentials when you're walking in. You just
Yep.
know that they're doing the class. And in all honesty, when I've coached people in that setting and they're brand fucking new, they're getting way more attention from me than anybody else, which is almost a disservice to the rest of the people. You know what I mean? And because
Yep.
they're so new, and you again, like that's just my personal feel. I get that you should be able to come in and scale it appropriately, but like at the same time, like I would
When you have a room, when you have a room of like 30 people, it's a little bit, it's hard, as a
It
coach.
is, yeah, triaging and getting enough touches. And again, you would know all your athletes that are at different skill levels and, like, and it takes time with your normal population. You're not getting a drop in, group that's like five deep typically, right? It might be like one or two people, right, per class. But at that point in time, too, it's like there's a lot that a really good coach has to process in that group setting to make it fun, to make it inviting, to get the coaching points across, help people try to improve themselves and be better than they used to be. Like, you know what I mean? Like, get something out of that day because that's what they're there for. And also make sure that that other brand new person had the best fucking day of their life while beating them, like beating the pulp out of them, quote unquote, right? Like, they're like, damn,
It's
that
called
sucks. That I, yeah.
it's called
Yeah.
entertainment. Jonathan, we're gonna write a book on it. Entertainment, right?
Yeah,
Training them
that's
as you're
it.
entertaining them.
Yeah, and I will say too, like there's CrossFit gyms that do it well. Like shout out to HW Athletics in Nashville, Tennessee, and Trey Fitch. Like this is a gym I'm a part of. Actually, train my clients here now, and they have an amazing onboarding process where they require weeks before people get into the classes.
Oh, that's
And Trey
awesome.
is like coaching them through every single movement, and he's making sure okay
Yeah.
they can do a snatch, they can do a squat, they can do a hinge, so they're not blowing out their back doing deadlifts for as many reps as possible with the rowing machine. Like they do an
Yeah.
amazing job of doing that. But that's few and far between. And even talking about the scaling of exercises, like Trey is dialed in with getting his clients, every single person. He's like, okay, you can't do this movement. We need to scale it down. But like I said, that's not the common CrossFit gym. And most
Yeah.
coaches aren't skilled enough to make that scaling appropriate for each individual as it is, which is the unfortunate part. Most CrossFit coaches don't necessarily do it full time, so they don't have that skill to actually know what that progression looks like, is what I found at least.
Well, that's
A lot
the
of,
thing is like not only I'm gonna touch on two things here. Is like it's for the business, it's a healthy business move to have on ramping classes. Because to be quite honest, when we started pulling this into the program that I was coaching head coach of a few years ago, um, our biggest class was called Kick Fit, which is based off of like Box and Burn, Glenn Holmes and Tony Jeffries is like boxing class here on LA. And no one knows the combinations if you're coming in there cold. That's a boxing, you know, kickboxing fitness class. And it's like no person off the street's gonna know that. Like they're gonna know a jab and a cross, but most people won't. And so we have to do an onboarding class, but that's a good business model because you can give the coach some, semi-private, some private one-on-one cash flow. But it's also great a retention on the business because then the business is like, oh, our clients feel like their onboarding experience is great from the beginning to end, so that when they feel like they've been walked across that bridge, they're gonna stick with the gym a little longer, the business a little longer because they just felt great from the get-go. They didn't feel lost, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
one. Two, I think the progressions and regressions concept to this day, I think this is why it's important for coaches like you, Jonathan, Marcos, and I like to still go to like the NCAA, like or the the to go to like the workshops, the seminars, the all those things, the CSCS, the NSCA like conferences, because they're gonna show you the progressions and regressions at the end of the day, and like it's impossible to know all the regressions and progressions. And then also at the same time, you got to know the person's personality. Are they willing to be coached up in a room full of people? Brett Bartholomew talks about this, right, Marcos? Like there's like 21 personality types. If you coach someone, but then like you coach them the wrong way, they're gonna feel embarrassed. Or if you don't say it in the right tone, they're gonna feel embarrassed. You're like, man, a coach not only has to figure out the technical aspect of the job, but he has to figure out the emotional aspect of the person in front of him. Oh, by the way, you've got 30 people in front of you. Figure it out. Good job, coach.
Yeah, man. Now, coaching is just a thing too, where I don't think people understand the complexities to being a good coach. And especially when it is a larger group, one on one, you have that a little bit more opportunity to fail in your communication, I would say, because there's not the other factor of the larger group, And I think that is my one thing with CrossFit coaching, and just in general, like the boot camp model where the coaches aren't as skilled. They're kind of lower level entry. You just can kind of just do it because you're fit or because they just need somebody to hire, They don't understand that complexity. And a lot of times it can get people to actually not enjoy fitness, not feel like they can be a part of a gym. And a lot of the times it gets people just in a poor state of mindset of what health and fitness actually looks like.
Yeah. No, good
It's
point.
true. I don't know. All right, I'm gonna ask this question to all of us here. As much as we love coaching, if you had the opportunity to move to something else right now, would you? If it paid the same and or more?
If it paid the same, I wouldn't change what I'm doing right now if it paid the same.
Okay.
I think I do think there is obviously the understanding of transitioning to something that's higher leverage in terms of income is obviously most coaches think about that. Like you learn sales as a coach. I could go do sales somewhere else and make a lot more money, like that's obviously a thought that tons of coaches have. So that would be my thought.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a different answer here. And I know this sounds weird, but like I'm into the whole self-development thing and all this stuff, seen Tony Robbins multiple times and all these guys. At the end of the day, everybody is a coach. Now we're talking specific performance health coaching here, right? But anyone and anybody that has been able to change people's lives, they're coaching someone at a level. An educator is a coach, quote unquote. They're just educating them on that. I don't think I would change what I would particularly do, Marcos, because I love what we do. We love communicating on this podcast. We love our Athlete 2.0 community. We love them. We're coaching people. I think what I love about what we do is we're taking people from where they're at now and we're taking them from good to freaking amazing. And that means getting in between that head of theirs and being able to navigate their false beliefs, their limiting beliefs. And that might be coaching them through nutrition where they're like, well, I'm struggling through nutrition. Yeah, Marcos, you and I are experts at this. Jonathan, you're experts on fitness, nutrition, and stuff like that. I don't think I would change it because I love what I do, and at some point, then I got to learn how to make this a higher leverage business, income, things like that. And I think that comes down to different skills, Marcos. How can you sell? Are you relatable? Are you coachable? Are you giving people accountable? So I don't think I would change what I do because how could I just make this happen? We've seen it in different industries or the same industry where there are coaches that are doing amazing in our industry. So, yeah, I'm not going to change. I just do more of what I do.
Yeah. I would say one thing that just came to mind. I think getting better clients is a part of enjoying coaching. When you have clients that are bought in, you have clients that want to learn, you have clients that actually do what you tell them to do. Coaching is a lot more fun. Like it sucks when you're coaching somebody and they're like, oh, I can't seem to hit my nutrition. I'm like, well, have you done anything I told you to do? And they're like, no. It's like, okay, well, obviously you're not going to get results. Like that sucks. So like I would say getting better clients makes for a better coaching for me at least. So I think leveraging better clients would be my hopes instead of transitioning to something else.
There it is. What about you, Marcos? We got to put the question back on you.
Oh my God. Well, you guys don't have kids yet, so I mean, your empathy is just fucking zapped with your children and your family life in addition to other people's children and family life. And
Good
it's
point.
like it's different. And that's why I brought the question up because it's like, yo, if I had the opportunity to go like weld some shit and just not have to use my brain at times or like deal with emotion, I would probably sign up like tomorrow. But then the other part of me is like but I like the complexity and the problem solving of the mind and helping people get those breakthrough moments. So it's like it literally can't go anywhere because this is like the world's most complex Rubik's Cube, Seamus. You know what I mean? Like I keep spinning and partitioning, but I
That's
just don't
why
know the
I
solution.
love coaching, man.
No shit. That's why I use
I'm
that
gonna be honest with
analogy.
you, Marcos. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. Then I think, and not to make this about me and you. This is obviously Jonathan's time. That might be a question for you, Marcos. Where, okay, no matter what my situation is right now, whatever's going on with my kids, my family, and stuff like that, how could I still show up as the coach in front of this person in front of me and still deliver great results? Even though I might be zapped, even though I might be that. And I think that's a hard one because I've been there, having to show up at 5 a.m. and I just had an argument with my lady at 4 in the morning, and then I have to enter
She's
train a
wait, wait,
5
whoa, whoa,
a.m.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
class.
whoa, whoa, whoa,
And
Seamus, she's arguing with you at 4 in the morning. Like most women
bro,
I've dated have never been up
I've
never
had
been up
that.
that early.
Well, they're not Desiree, you know, they're not like my fiance who's up before me and gets after it. So what I'm trying to say is I totally get it. I get like you could be zapped of empathy, energy, and stuff like that. And I think that might be a question or something you might have to flesh out on your own of going like, what does that conversation look like in my head? Because I've had that conversation. It's interesting, you know. We all know here on the pod and just Jonathan and just Marcos and I, like, personal training is it's a hard one. Not all businesses, it's your own business. As a coach, it's your own business, you know. So it's difficult. So Jonathan, with that being said, maybe like, did you know, I know you're a coach and you're getting better clients and all this stuff, but how did you get through some of that kind of maybe questioning, doubt, anxiety of like, hey, I'm a coach, I'm starting my own business. I don't know if I'm going to put food on the table. Obviously, we don't have it to the degree with Marcos, who's got to feed more mouths than both of us combined. But like, how did you get through that like anxiety of like, man, I gotta ramp up here?
Yeah, honestly, dude, I wouldn't say I'm still in that, but I'm in a transition where I transitioned from my in person to online. And Marcos mentioned this like 20 minutes ago. Just that transition is not as easy as you would think it would be, transitioning a whole different business model. That has been a whole new thing for me over the past 8 months, and that has been. The reality of that change is that I've gone through more of that questioning of like, oh, dang, did I make the right move? Am I doing the right thing? And I think what tends to happen for me is I start to, out of that anxiety, out of that fear of losing clients, you start to maybe not actually coach as well. You start to not be as consistent with the things that are going to lead to more clients. And it's like, what is this new thing that I can do? What is this? What's the next move for me? And for me personally, the thing that has got me out of that anxiety, out of that questioning is like, okay, what work do I know I need to do? Like, what are these things that I know are going to lead to outcomes that I want? And then being able to weigh like, okay, these are the things I know I have to do. And then like, okay, the rest of the other stuff is like fun to think about, but I don't need to create anxiety with a ton of options. I need to work on what I actually have in front of me, what I know works. So for me over the
Yeah,
past year, it's really been about actually working and less thinking about all the things that I could be doing or what the options are, how to get more clients, and actually just work on the things that I know are going to result in more clients, result in more growth, whether that is clients or
yeah,
whether that's just education and a better system and a better coaching program for my clients. So it's more about the work for me and actually having a plan rather than creating so many options that result in anxiety, which has been the reality for me is I can create so many options and think about all the stuff I could be doing. And that creates anxiety
yeah.
outside of what just actually doing the work.
But that's so funny. I kind of had a lot of this anxiety literally recently, but I spoke with Marcos and our team, and I just said we're focusing on these three things: grow our community, grow a community, get our brand out there, and get some fucking amazing results. Like 1, 2, and 3, like maybe 5 things, right? That's it. Obviously, there's like specific sub steps, but it's like if you could just focus on that, I was like, we're gonna win. We're gonna win. Obviously, it's not hitting the bank account right away if you're thinking financial winning, but in due time it will. And I know that that's difficult. Like, again, Marco's saying like, hey, I got the kids, all this, but um, tell us about the systems. So like when you're talking about like the things you need to work on, Marcos, did you have something?
Yeah, there seems to be a slight delay today. Love it, internet. Um, the the thing that you're mentioning there about like, well, I mean, why I brought this question up is I guess like the similar struggles I think that every coach kind of is going after, like what, and it's like again, kind of refreshing to be like seeing this person like Jonathan, I'm referring to you obviously, like I'm seeing this person, like you're on my feed, I see the regularity, I see that grind, and for me sometimes it can lead to this feel of like, damn, I wish I had that motivation right now because I'm feeling burnt out, yet this person's doing it and I know I need to be doing it. So it was like this, it was like a ruminating thought. Like I was like, motherfucker, like I've like slacked on this shit, the work that needs to be done, like you just mentioned. And I'm like, what fuck, like there has to be an easier way to like have it materialize like appropriately and have like the calendar and the plan. And it was exactly what you just said. It was like there's too much on the plate of other bullshit I'm interested in that I need to just kind of put to the side for a little bit and put that like head down in direction. Because as much as you, yeah, Seamus, I wasn't saying that I'm always drained. I'm bringing it onto the call. If anything, phone calls are escapes at half
Oh
the
yeah, I know.
time. You know, it's like it's much easier to.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's like for most people that do social media for a living, it's much easier to do someone else's social media than their own. So like if you go to their personal page, it looks like trash, but then you see what they produce for other people, it looks amazing, right? Same thing when it comes to like
Yeah.
coaching people versus like some of the habits that I've been doing here lately. I'm like, I mean, I ain't gonna lie, I think I ate a dozen fucking cookies from Whole Foods last night, and I'm not even ashamed about it. Like, for no reason, for no fucking
You
reason, because
think
there's
or
no
you did,
goal.
bro? You think or you did, bro?
Well, I didn't count them, but I
Yeah.
think it was at least 8 to 12. They were the little ones. They were the little, but here's the thing,
Eight
it's
to
like
two.
I'm not in pursuit of a I wasn't in pursuit of a goal. Or no, I'm not in pursuit of a goal.
Yeah.
We redirected and created goal with what we're trying to do here to put more focus work there. Same thing needs to happen with the body. Like, and when John, when you're mentioning the like your client, like, well, have you done anything that I told you to do? And then, like my answer with like everything business and personal, that'd be no, I haven't. Like, I know what to do, I'm just not doing it. That person, again, they're learning that experience for the first time. And those, I mean, nothing really gets
Yeah.
anywhere unless you're having those conversations with people. So that, like that's like my aside is like the question isn't that quote I'm struggling, but I'm seeing all these other people do great things, and again, it looks effortless. You know, like it's cool to see that. I'm like, how can you get some tip? I was not looking for tips, or if he's dealing with something similar, because again, we're all quote unquote competing for the same people, even though we're not, right? Like, it's just it's an interesting kind of way of doing it. There's so many people out there looking for the right person to work with one to one or in a group, and we just, you know, it's just it's been a lot of things on my mind here, Seamus. That's what happens when I go on a plane for a couple hours.
I think it's yeah, well, we're definitely gonna deeper dive, you and I, obviously, because we love our conversations together. But I think it makes sense. I think, this podcast in its itself, Jonathan, just to send aside here, like the serendipitous of this podcast, just Marcos and I were connecting about like, hey, how are you doing with your coaching? And then realizing like, dude, our systems are fucking archaic, sorry for the language, but we're like trying to coach people, but we can't even type notes into the computer appropriately because like the systems and things are archaic, and like we're just getting mad at the some of the people that were not mad at the people, but like kind of having like some asides. Like, I don't think they're understanding the science of, weight loss as much as we know about weight loss nowadays and all these different things. But like, we have to tiptoe in this world because we're trying to bridge clinical with practical, yet at the same time, we're bridging it with a client. And this is the thing I've learned as like a coach. And I love what Marcus brought up here is like, I had this client today who is super smart, highly intelligent, like a top tier lawyer. He can go through 5 to 7 books in a week. I think he knows more about nutrition and nutrition sciences than I do, but he doesn't know how to apply it at all. And I'm like, and that's the difference, right? Is like when you're in your head, right, Marcos, and you're ruminating and you know the things, right? I think that sometimes is like a crippling effect because it's like, what's up, but how does it materialize? Like, the world is not catching up with what's in your head. So you're frustrated and you're mad and you're like feeling burnt out because it's like, how do you do that? And then you start realizing, oh, yeah, I just got to do the work. Because that's what it actually is. It's not the concepts. It's not what's in the books. It's like what my actions are. And that's, I don't know, I think that's always a and that was the same thing with my client. He like knows so much, yet I was like, yet you're frustrated because you keep, eating 6,000 calories when you're supposed to be tracking like 2,500. What are you doing?
Analysis
So,
paralysis,
I think it's
bro.
just figuring that out. I know,
Analysis
right?
paralysis.
That's what
That's
happens
it,
when you're too
dude.
smart, Marcos.
Well, every
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, this is last aside. I was watching The Flash yesterday on the plane, and it was like, how many ways can you make the number 24? And then like again, he's having a nerd moment because I guess the Flash is a nerdy character, whatever. And he's like, there's an infinite amount, like this is impossible. And the mom goes like, not every problem needs a solution. And I was like, God damn, like, like in the point of the moment, in the movie, I was like, I was literally thinking about every different way that this guy's probably thinking about getting to 24. He's like, well, division or addition, subtraction, all that stuff. And then, yeah, not every problem needs a direct solution. And then people that are overly educating themselves, they're like, this thing is going to solve this hyperlipidemia and I need this exact amount. And it's like, no, like, maybe you do need to work
Yep.
on polyunsaturated fats from some sardines. And well, like, what is a realistic number per week? You're going to do it daily? Probably not. 3 times a week? All right, cool. Maybe, like, um, and that's where, I mean, all of us know. How do we bridge that? That's what a coach guide is really for. So, yeah. All right. But, all right, dude. So, question here. Why did you drop the name of your company and move it to your name? Like, because I think I know why, but I'm kind of curious, like, as to like why you decided to go with like your name as the branding versus, yeah, because you had a dope logo. I like the name, previously. So I'm like, what caused that? I'm interested.
Yeah. So as Marcos mentioned earlier, actually, my name for my company used to be Transcend Performance and Nutrition. The thought with that when I got into coaching was I was like trying to think of just cool names. And for me, my faith is very important to me. So like transcendent obviously is like above, and I was thinking about, okay, what can that mean for the average person in a day to day, right? So a lot of what I was doing at the beginning was trying to bridge faith and fitness and nutrition and all those things together. So that was a lot of it. And I was trying to brand myself as that. I was in a coaching group that was really talking about like having a specific avatar. And I was trying to do that whole route of like, this is my exact avatar. I'm trying to sell to this person. So I need a brand. And then
Was
what
that
I figured out of,
was that Coaching Mastery? Was that NCI?
yeah, it was in CI actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Which I learned a lot of things there. I don't want to hate on them completely, but I learned a lot of things there and a lot of things I didn't like as well. But the transition from that to my name was focused more so on connection in the community and building a name for myself outside of a company that wasn't a company, like I don't have coaches under me. I don't have hundreds of clients, right? So I'm like, okay, how can I get more people to know me by me, not by some other name that nobody's going to remember? So for me, I was like, I'm going to transition everything to my name. People in my hometown, they know my name. When they see Jay Lutz coaching, that resonates with them. They know who that is. When people from the county from beside where I grew up, they see that name, they're probably going to know who it is. Resonates with them. So I'm like, how can I connect with more people just with my name? And then
Yeah.
from there in the future, I may end up going back to Transcend Performance and Nutrition. I don't know. But for now, I just thought it was the best move for branding as we could use it. But overall, I think just the connection piece of getting the community connected with my name was the important thought.
Jonathan, what's on brand for Jonathan? Like, who are you? Um, like, how do you show yourself, like, about who you are? Like, what's your quirks? What do you like? How do people know, like, oh, that's Jonathan? Like, what would your friends say about you? Like, yeah, he's that guy.
Man, honestly, I don't want this to sound like come off the wrong way, but if I had to say what would people say about me that really know me, it would be like, oh, he's the guy that's like really disciplined, and he's always been very into, they may even call me selfish if I'm being honest, just because I've been so about my stuff my entire life. Like, it was sports, it was nutrition, it was training. Like, I was all about it. I didn't go to my high school senior prom because I was training, like, straight up. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't do a lot of stuff because I was doing my sports, and like, I was committed to being the very best. I would say that's what people would know me by. Now, outside of the people that know me well, I would hope that a lot of people would see me as, number one, like, my main thing that I want people to recognize is like, I'm just somebody who loves everybody. I want to love everybody just as Christ loves everybody. So I'm a Christian. That's what I believe in. I want to project that on other people. So that would be my number one thing that I want people to get. I mean, also the secondary thing to that is like, I want people to understand I'm a person who believes that everybody has the highest potential for themselves, and like, they have that capability to reach that. And I try to, if you see my social media, you'll see me talking a lot about gratitude and being just thankful for what you have, and tying that into how you can propel yourself to that potential that you have, and reach that outcome that you may not even recognize you have in you, but that I recognize everybody has inside of them. So that's kind of a long-winded way around to go around it. But I don't have pillars for my branding. I don't have like specific words that I'm trying to like go after. I just want people to understand, recognize their potential, and I would want people to recognize me as the person who sees that in them. And I try to do that on my social media, and get people to recognize that, and feel that.
I would have to agree from I don't know you at the level of like your hometown friends or like the people you have that, but I definitely consider you one. Obviously, you reached out to me at a pivotal moment of my own journey in this life, and kind of told me some things like in a vote of confidence about what was going on, kind of behind my back, which showed your integrity in a way that I hope most people could kind of tell people about. And it was at that moment where I was like, it's nice, it's refreshing to know that people that I was working with did see me for me and not what other people were saying about me. And they were trying to make me look like paint me as the bad guy. It was what it was. So I know that like that image that you project is definitely what I see, and I also know it from your character, to be honest with you. So I appreciate you for that back then. I don't know if I've ever told you that, like big time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate that. And honestly, that's one of my things. You'll see me will say this a lot on social media is like, just be the person who does what they say they're going to do, and be a person that's reliable. Like, that's what it is. Like, I just want people that don't do what they say they're going to do, or people that back out of what they say they're going to do, or that turn their backs on people. That is my biggest pet peeve. Like, I just want to be somebody that's reliable in every area of life. So that's my goal.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Hey,
man, it's so funny. Marcos and I have been talking about this guy. We're trying to get him on the pod too, but Adam Lane Smith, and he has this whole like attachment course that I'm kind of going through Mind Pump. And the second episode was about friendships and cultivating great friendships. And literally the only thing that I got out of that was literally what you said, is saying who you are and doing what you said you would do, and then following up on it. And then if you're a good friend on the other end, is if that person is getting out of character and you're like, dude, you're better than that. It's like just letting them know, like, hey, you're better than that. I didn't expect you to handle the situation like that or make that decision this way. I thought you would do something else. I feel like that right there is like a true sense of that character. And I sense that from you, Jonathan. I sense that from you. I sense that from Marcos. And the people that I've had in my life, like, they call me out. I think that's like the best, is like when you're getting a little bit maybe ahead of yourself or out of character maybe in a negative way, or maybe that's not self-serving to you and serving to your community. I appreciate when people would do that, because it's a good check. It's a good check because you can get your ego inflated, and next thing you know, you're not being who you say you are, and you're doing the wrong things for the wrong reasons. So I see that from you, Jonathan. That's awesome, man. I like that.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that. And then this thought just came to mind too. That's something I tried to really do well with my clients as well, is just be straightforward with them and like have hard conversations. And I was even thinking about this today. I had a call with a client who just is not showing up and doing what he knows he needs to be doing. I've been working with him for a straight up year, and he has not followed through week after week after week. And today was just the day I was like, okay, it's been too long. I got to talk to this guy and just tell him straight up what I'm thinking, what I've been thinking for the past month or so. And it's like, just being honest with people, tell them that you literally want the best for them, and direct them on what you think they could be doing better to reach that full potential. And like you said, a lot of the times that check is good for the individual. It may hurt for a moment, but those hard conversations are what progress you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
true. That's the biggest moments are when you come to terms with those failing pieces and you try to, you try not to just go insane with it. You know what I mean? Like it's what I learned from, past experience with people, and it's why I know in my heart of hearts with people getting to their end result, it requires in the beginning a level of attention that is probably weekly. That's 20 to 30 minutes minimum in length to really dissect what's going on in their lives and why they aren't showing up for themselves, as much as it is like getting them to like try to like get the parameters of what they need. You know what I mean? And it's a again like that was something I failed at in the beginning and that I've continued to learn about. So getting those people to show up, I mean, damn, that's like, yeah, you know what though? I think you'll persevere with that, dude. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's like you'll say that one thing a year later, and that's like it all clicked because like they have to be doing something, right? They're not doing nothing. They're just not maybe executing at a level of consistency that's breeding a positive result just yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's good.
Yeah.
Jonathan, I want to ask you before we kind of close. I know we got like an hour here with you. Is that kind of more so the message that you're sending out now? Is like more that gratitude, self development, vibrating at a higher frequency for yourself? And obviously, I'm a Christian as well, so I appreciate that of you. But we do like the faith conversation here. We keep it low key just because obviously I don't know, sometimes people get a little on that, but is that something you're just projecting with your material, like talking about more self-development? You're not necessarily, you're still talking about the fitness and nutrition component, but tying in like the
Yeah.
self-development aspect of all things.
Yeah, exactly. I really try to get people to recognize the connection there, and I think people miss it a lot, is how they show up with their health and fitness is a lot of the times reflective of how they're showing up in other areas of their life, and I see that a lot with my clients, in that a lot of them say they want to change. They tell me about it. They try to change, but it doesn't happen. And a lot of the times we can talk through some other areas of their life where they're feeling the same way. And specifically with the faith conversation too, it's a really common conversation to talk about the same issues with your faith, and whether that's your prayer or your reading of your scripture. And then even outside of faith, when you're thinking about the gratitude and being thankful, like those are hard things to do. But getting people to see that connection is something that I want people to recognize, because I think when
Hmm.
you can draw that connection in one area, it helps you see it in another area. And once you get that
Yeah.
well-rounded understanding of the connection there, your life gets a lot easier. Like, it's just an
Yeah.
easier, less stressful, less anxious life when you recognize that you're in control of a lot of it. And a lot of it comes back
Yeah.
to those actions that you're struggling with, and improving those things over time. Not
Yeah.
being perfect, but just continuing to progress.
Marcos, any last questions here just to end off? I want to be respectful of Jonathan's time, coming up on an hour, but any last questions, my man?
Uh, Man, I mean, there's a lot of things to continue to pivot into. An hour is always too short, but the I like what you said there about that, the practicing of like the faith and that kind of a component, and like how that those principles are being rooted in those things that are faith driven can actually have a parallel to things that are, really worth pursuing. That kind of like dawned on me very quickly as soon as you said that. So I appreciate like that kind of stance with it, because you're right. Like the basics of a faith-based practice is like you just said, prayer, scripture, and things that don't really take a ton of time but are very easy to overlook unless you're like really embodying like the changes that you're looking to make, whether it is like being in pursuant of that, just like when it comes to fitness, it's the 5 to 10 minutes of pre-planning your day or journaling your food that then leads to the change because you actually have things documented, right? And like I told this to Seamus, and I think I mentioned it on some recent episodes, or whether maybe it's in our group that we're doing right now. It was like the number one thing to help you make a change is to write shit down, to journal it, right? Like, and there's like a level of like active participation with nutrition, with fitness, with your faith, right? I mean, I know people that are very religious, that are friends of mine. I haven't seen you post it, but another buddy of mine, he's highlighting and annotating his Bible, and I'm like, like, well, why do you need to annotate this? But he may have just had like some sort of thought or process that came about, and that is like showing that like active mindset to really being aware that like you're open to these changes, or that's speaking to you right now with all the struggles you're dealing with. Um, and I don't personally practice a ton of faith-based practices. A lot of times I actually suck with journaling, but I do, ironically enough, now realize I have to get back to that because that's where everything starts to actually move in the right direction. These are the things I need to get done today. These are things that went well. These are the scaffolding of the ideas for reels posts and media, blah 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 blah. I mean, it's all the same shit, right? It's just, what area, quote, pillars, right? Like the ones that we talk about, right? Like, are you wanting to put more and invest more time into? And yeah, like, and again, I love that you said that you don't really have pillars, but I'm sure you have themes. You have things that you have identified that you talk about with people. You're not like necessarily embodying it or selling it, but I'm sure the the only reason why we have pillars or these ideas, well, to be honest with you, is because I needed a framework to position to get a nonprofit going. So these things came out of necessity for explaining concepts that could then be run with through a lawyer, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, yeah. It definitely, I mean, obviously, everybody, any coach has some type of pillars. Maybe they're not specifically written down or identified, but yeah, definitely have those things that I try to draw connection to and draw awareness to for my clients. And one thing I always say and that I constantly reiterate with my clients is just awareness leads to actions, which leads to results. And it's just like understanding that process of like with everything you do, create awareness around why the things are happening, why they're not happening, figure out how you're going to do it. That's the actions. And then you're going to get results based off of the actions you're fulfilling. So that is my conversation with clients, my thing that I try to get them to understand and carry that over to every area of their life, is that
Yeah.
just create awareness around where they're struggling, why they're struggling. That way they can create direction and get those results that they desire.
That's awesome. Well, Jonathan, we'll end it here. We're definitely gonna do a part 2. I know you've got your own podcast coming out now, right? So we'll probably, Marcos and I will we will hop on there and
Yeah.
we'll talk about our stuff, and we'll do the other way around where you're interviewing us. But we'll end it here. Jonathan, where can people find you if you've got like a course or product out or anything like that, website? Let them know and see if they can work with you, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. So as he mentioned, I have podcast Health Minds. I now am at episode number 6. So I'll be putting out episode number 7 on this coming Monday. Every single Monday, I put out an episode that's interviews and solo episodes. I don't have any courses, but I do one-on-one online coaching, nutrition, and training. Obviously, would love for you to join their community first if you feel like that's where you're being called to. If you feel like you resonate with what I'm saying, obviously would love to help if you don't feel like they're the fit for you. But yeah, that is the podcast, the coaching, and then follow me on Instagram, Let's Jonathan _ content every single day, staying active in my stories. And that's the rundown.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much, Jonathan. All right, my perspective peeps, you heard it. We'll get the notes out there for you. We'll get all the specific links, and check out the part 2 after this one, maybe in the upcoming months on his pod. Thanks, guys. Appreciate